everybody get the thing to draw? I think everybody was here. Mr. Edwards here, so I'm gonna give this to you. You can do it or not do it, but it's the dream in this chapter, and drawing it out. Did anybody draw it out? Anybody like brazen enough to draw out the dream in chapter 4?
It's too hard.
Okay. Okay. Did you? Oh, can you share it with us?
I figured he did.
Boy, he is, I'm telling you, he's putting you guys to shame. I can just tell you that right now. Okay, will you share it with us? No?
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. I'll
We're
share
already
mine.
brave enough to do it. Show it to us.
I'll share mine and you'll share yours.
I'll share it.
She did hers too?
Kim? Oh, you did?
Yeah, let's see.
Come on, let's see it. Look, I've had people do the stick figure thing, and it was absolutely precious because it meant something to them. This is not about how good an artist you are.
I just did a tree, and then I did a tree falling, and then I did this Nebuchadnezzar standing with him.
I think that captures good. His dream is
That
a
looks
cloud.
good.
And
Yeah,
the one is bound down, the other turned his back to those bound down, looking the other way.
that looks really good. I've got it on. Is it on?
I don't know, usually green light on?
Green light's on. Okay, so I'm gonna show you mine. Okay, this is the dream. Okay, so this is the tree. It's all the stuff that's under it, growing and thriving. And then the angelic watcher comes down and cuts the tree down, and you got the stump. And then this is the interpretation of the dream. So Nebuchadnezzar's bigger and better than he was before. No, I mean, this is him the first time. And then this is him made like a beast to crawl on all fours. And so what I did was I went ahead and just drew out the whole chapter. So you have the dream and the interpretation, and then the tree is bigger and better than it was before. And if you can see my Nebuchadnezzar, he's going. Okay. He's bigger and better, and he's acknowledging the God Most High. Okay. So you just kind of have fun with that, and it just helps you remember. If you can attach something that you've done or written out or drawn out, sometimes it helps you remember the text more clearly. All right, so the Daniel at a glance. All right, so you've got chapters 1 and 2 filled in. Chapter 3, what's the theme of chapter 3 that we did last week? What was the gist of last week's study? The three boys, Hannah, Mishael, and Azariah, were delivered from the fiery furnace. So that my chapter 3, I put Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, or you could do the Hebrew names, delivered from the fiery furnace. That's pretty much what chapter 3 was about. So you want to fill that in. So that should give you chapter 1, Daniel and his friends into the king's service, or however you want to word it. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue and the stone, and Daniel interprets. And then the three boys are delivered from the fiery furnace. Okay. So we got that, and then you had your homework, and so I'm not going to go over the homework, but what I'm going to do is incorporate some of your answers from the homework that are going to be as we go through this. All right, so tonight what we're going to do, our goal is to evaluate the sovereignty. I want to introduce you to El Elyon. One of the things I dearly love is knowing and understanding the different names of the God of Israel. They display in a wonderful way his character. And when there are times when you are in certain situations and you call him the Father and you know you're reminded of his character about whether he heals or whether he gives peace or whatever, and you call on him by that name, to me personally. So one of my favorite names for the God of Israel, we see in the book of Daniel, and it's El Elyon, God Most High. Okay? And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about his sovereignty. But we're also going to talk about our sovereign God of Israel, the El Elyon, but we're going to talk about man's responsibility. Okay? Because sometimes when you see a God that is so sovereign, you begin to wonder, well, what's the use? He's going to do what he's going to do. What responsibility do I have? Does that take away or does that change my responsibility? We're going to look at that. And then we want to realize, too, that if and when you've lost everything, there's something you can do, and that's look up. And that's what we're going to learn from this chapter. So it's not just a story about Nebuchadnezzar. It's not just a prophecy. We want to draw out of it from chapter 4 how it affects our life, how it can change us, how it can make us holy as he is holy, how it can draw us to the Most High God of Israel. So you have a God Most High. You have an El Elyon. And you need to know that if you have him, you have everything. So take hold of that fact. In your homework, I asked the question about, in the different chapters, what was Nebuchadnezzar's opinion of God, and very much. So in chapter 1, there was no mention of Nebuchadnezzar's relationship to Jehovah, but we have an idea of what he thought about him. He came in, he captured his people, he took all the articles from the temple. He took the people into slavery, into captivity. So although it doesn't mention what Nebuchadnezzar thought of, or even if he knew of the God of Israel, look what he did. And then in chapter 2, he had a dream. What was the dream about? The statue and the stone. And as Mr. West says, it was a prophecy about the earthly kingdoms and then the final kingdom that's going to come. And so when he had this dream and Daniel interpreted the dream, Nebuchadnezzar's response was, your God is a God of gods. He was introduced to the God of Israel, but it was not his God. He said, your God, Daniel, is a God of gods. And so he saw him as Daniel's God. Then in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar proved Daniel's God was not his God because he did what? He set up a statue, and he called everyone to worship the statue because he was the king, he was the God. Although he recognized the God of Israel as Daniel's God, it was not his God. And he had people bow down to it. So he was a God that was to be worshipped. And he told the three boys, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he says, there is no God to deliver you from my hands. But when he saw them come out of the fire, not even smelling like smoke, what did he say? Yeah, there is no God like your God. He said, when he saw that God deliver them from the fire, he proclaimed that they were servants of the Most High God. And he blessed the God of Israel. And he made a decree that no one could speak against the God of Israel or they would be put to death. Okay? So we see a growing awareness of his, of the God Most High to Nebuchadnezzar. If Daniel wasn't living a Torah-observant life and wasn't obedient, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not obedient, would Nebuchadnezzar be seeing these things?
No.
Probably not. And I can even take it a step further. If they hadn't been taken into captivity, would Nebuchadnezzar be seeing these things? There's a plan. So no matter where you are, no matter where you're captive, no matter what's going on in your life, you can know that the Father is working. He's working his plan. And he's going to use you, or he's going to use somebody around you. And he has got a plan for your life, just like he had for Daniel's. And it doesn't depend on your situation and circumstances, and it doesn't depend on how we feel. it depends on, he's got a plan to draw others to him and to glorify himself, so that his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we see a growing awareness of Elohim, but it's not changed Nebuchadnezzar's life thus far. Okay, so because he's not accepted in his personal God. But in chapter 4, we're going to see a change of heart. We're going to see an exciting change of heart. So go with me to chapter 4. And just to open this chapter up, these chapters are in chronological order. And who's been writing in chapter 1, 2, and 3? Who is the author? Who is the human author of those chapters? Daniel. And he's speaking in first person, right? It's like he's telling a story. And so this was written near the end of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. He reigned from about 605 BC to 562 BC. And this was about 8 years before the end of his reign. We know a lot about Nebuchadnezzar. We know a lot about the Babylonian kingdom because, one, there are lots of artifacts, but there were amazing historians. And so a lot has been preserved throughout time, throughout history, to tell us a lot about this kingdom and to tell us a lot about Nebuchadnezzar himself. And so, but it's like Daniel's been writing, and now Nebuchadnezzar says, Daniel, give me the pen. Let me write. So now you have this very evil king, okay? And he's allowed to write into the Holy Scriptures. That's pretty strange, isn't it? Because you think of most of the people that write in the Scripture are believers. They're the Father's people. But Nebuchadnezzar at this time was not. And he was allowed to write into the Scripture. So it's really very interesting. So this is in first person, and Nebuchadnezzar's now writing. All right? And he's sending out his testimony to everyone, everywhere. Okay? And so he's writing his testimony in this book. And in verse 1, it says, Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all peoples, nations, and men of every language that live on the earth, may your peace abound. All right? And in verse 2, tell me, why does it say that he's writing? Look at verse 2. Why does it say that he's writing now? Because we want to examine these scriptures. Did you take time to read through this and look for your key words, look for contrast, look for... Okay. It seemed good to me to declare what? The signs and wonders which the Most High God, or El Elyon, if you have it in Hebrew, that it wouldn't say Most High God, it would say El Elyon, has done for me. Okay, so now we see a drastic change. It's always been about Daniel's God, or Hananiah, Azrael, and Mishael's God, but it's never been Nebuchadnezzar's God. And here we see now he has accepted the God of Israel as his God. This is huge. This is huge, and we're gonna look at that. So these are Nebuchadnezzar's words. Something seems to have changed his attitude. Right? So he says, how great are his signs and wonders, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. So before we go any further, what I want us to do is I want us to take a look at El Elyon, because I want you to see just what and who your Most High God, okay, if he is your God, what is he sovereign over? What is he ruler of? What is he the Most High God of? So there's tons of scriptures. In fact, El Elyon is in 48 verses, mostly found in Daniel and mostly found in the Psalms. All right, so let's just go through these together, and I want you to follow the slides with me because I want you to see this for yourself. All right, and how does Abraham describe El Elyon? He says, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of El Elyon. So Abraham knew him as El Elyon, the God Most High.
And Salem, right there, was
Jerusalem.
of the old.
Right,
That was Jerusalem.
right. And Melchizedek was the king and the priest, the high priest. And he blessed him, and he said, blessed be Abraham of El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be El Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tenth of all. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to Jehovah El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth. So this takes away any doubt as to who El Elyon is. Who is the God Most High? It is Jehovah. Okay? It's used together in Scripture here. So when we look at this, we see that the God of Israel is the Most High God over enemies, over his enemies. And if we belong to him, our enemies are his enemies, and his enemies are our enemies. So he is over our enemies. And it says here, he is possessor of heaven and earth. Possessor of heaven and earth. We're stewards. He's possessor. Now, thought maybe it was off, but it's all right. And then the next one we're going to look at is Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. And you have these in your homework to look these up, but I'm going to go through them with you.
That's right.
Okay? So what is El Elyon's relationship to the nations? When El Elyon gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of man, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel. Okay. So what is he ruler of? Nations. And what does he give nations? Their inheritance. You know, you may not agree, and there are people in this world that don't agree, that the land of Canaan, okay, belongs to Israel. Okay? But guess what? It does, because he said that it does. He gives lands, he gives nations their inheritance. Okay? It is his to give. All right, in Psalms 42:7, what is he king? 47:2, what is he king over? All the earth. Okay? And in 57:2, what is his relationship to you? What does he do for you? He accomplishes all things for me. What about Psalms 83:18? It says, that they may know that thou alone, whose name is Jehovah, art El Elyon over all the earth. Jehovah is the God Most High over all the earth. There are no other gods. In Daniel 3:26, and Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. Okay. So they were servants of the Most High God. Was Daniel a servant of the Most High God, of El Elyon? Then in Daniel 4:17, who rules over man? We saw that he rules over nations and over all the earth, but let's break it down. Who rules over man? El Elyon. It says, the sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers, and the decision is the command of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that El Elyon is ruler over the realm of mankind, and bestows it on whom he wishes, and sets over it the lowliest of men. All right, in Daniel 4:34 and 35, what's the time frame of El Elyon? Let's look at that. But at the end of that period, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my reason returned to me, and I blessed El Elyon and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, but he does according to his will in the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and no one can ward off his hand or say to him, what hast thou done? All right, so what do you see in this scripture that he's ruler over? Well, first of all, his dominion is everlasting. It never ends. It endures forever and from generation to generation. What about his will?
Whatever he will.
What he does according to his will. Newsflash, he doesn't do according to Angie's will. I found that out too many times. All right, he doesn't do according to our will. It is his will that he does according to. And no one can ward off his hand. Okay? He's the end of the line. There is no one bigger, stronger, better, smarter than he is. All right. right, and what does he grant in Daniel 5:18? O King Elyon granted sovereignty, grandeur, and glory, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar your father. Okay. So he is ruler over these things, and he can give them to whom he chooses to give them to. And you say, why would he give those things to Nebuchadnezzar, such an evil man? Well, because he was introducing himself to Nebuchadnezzar, and he had a plan. All right, in Psalms 59:13, does El Elyon rule over just Israel? Is he, we call him the God of Israel, which indeed he is, but is he ruler just of Israel? Destroy them in wrath. That's right, destroy them that they may be no more, that men may know that Elohim rules in Jacob and to the ends of the earth. And Jacob is Israel, or Yaakov is Israel. So he not only is the God Most High of Israel, he is over all the earth. Does that include the pagan nations?
Yes.
Does that include those pagan nations that absolutely do not acknowledge him and persecute the believers? Yes, he is still ruler over those nations. All right, so who is keeper of the nations? He rules by his might forever, not by our might, not by our technology, not by our intelligence. He rules by his might forever. His eyes keep watch on the nations. Let not the rebellious exalt themselves. He never slumbers, he never sleeps. His eyes on the nations. He keeps watch over the nations. I wonder if this means he's a protector of the nations. And do you see what else this can mean? He watches over the nations. Does anything escape him? Nothing escapes him. Okay. All right, and then Psalm 103:19, where's his throne? In the heavens. Yeah, it says he established his throne in the heavens, and his sovereignty rules over all. All right. What about Isaiah 14:24 and 27? What about his plans? It says, Yehovah of hosts, and that would be in Hebrew, Yehovah, that would be Sabaoth. Yehovah of hosts has sworn, saying, surely just as I have intended, so it has happened, and just as I have planned it, so it will stand. For Yehovah of hosts has planned, and who can frustrate it? As far his outstretched hand, who can turn it back? Can we change his mind? Can we change his plans? Once he has put his plan into motion, can we change it?
We want to be a part of it.
We can be a part of it. So, his plans are sovereign, and no one can thwart his plan. That's hard for me to say. Job 42:2. What about his purpose? I know that thou canst do all things, and that no purpose of thine can be thwarted. Psalm 139:13 through 16. This is probably one of my favorites, because you need to know that Yehovah, that El Elyon is the God Most High over life itself, over your life and over the life of the unborn. For thou didst form my inward parts, thou didst weaken me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And don't let anybody ever tell you you're not. Okay? Because Hasatan would love for you to not believe that. But that's his word. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are thy works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from thee when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Thine eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in thy book they were all written, the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. So David he knew. He knew his God Most High. He knew who created life. So what does it say? That El Elyon not only rules over the universe and nations, and his plans can't be frustrated, but he creates life. That he creates you. He knew you when you were in your mother's womb. And what else does it say? It says that and in thy book they were all written. The days that were ordained for me. So what else is he ruler of? The days of our lives. Okay. All right. What about? Let's look at the next one. 1 Samuel 1:5 through 6, and this is Hannah and Hannah's story. But to Hannah, he, that's her husband, would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah. But Jehovah had closed her womb. Her rival, however, would provoke her bitterly to irritate her because Jehovah had closed her womb. So he opens and he closes the womb. And so he's sovereign over life. So you have to ask about abortion. Okay? If he opens and closes the womb, and if he opens a womb, then what gives man the right to close that womb once he's opened it? What gives us right to take the life that he has created and formed and knew, even when we weren't? So he is sovereign over the womb. He's sovereign over life. And in Job 14:5, since his days are determined, the number of his months is with thee, and his limits thou hast set, so that he cannot pass. Okay? He knows when you're born. He knows the day you're going to die. He knows your life. And in Deuteronomy 32:39, see now that I am he, and there is no God beside me. It is I who put to death and give life. I have wounded, and it is I who heal, and there is no one who can deliver from my hand. All right, so El Elyon puts to death. He gives life. He wounds. He heals. And no one can take you out of his hand, except for one person. That's right, we have a choice, don't we? Nobody can take you out of his hand, but you can choose to turn your back and walk away from him. Now, he's still got his eye on you, and he's still got his hand on you, but you're outside of his protection when you walk away and you deny him. Okay? So no one can take you out of his hand. All right, what about Isaiah 46:9-10? Remember the former things past, for I am Elohim, and there is no other. I am Elohim, and there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from the ancient times, things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish all of my good pleasure. Okay, so what does he know? What does the God Most High know?
The beginning from the end.
The beginning from the end. He knows the past, the present, and the future. And there's no one like him, he says. And he's going to accomplish his purpose and his pleasure. And his plans will come to pass. Do you doubt that? Look in Scripture. Every bit of prophecy has occurred up to now that was supposed to have occurred up to now. There is nothing that has not happened to this point in time. So when he plans it, it's going to come about. All right, in Job 36:30-32, what else is he over on this earth? Behold, he spreads his lightning about him. And in the Hebrew text, I think the word is light here. Behold, he spreads his lightning about him, and he covers the depths of the sea. For by these he judges peoples, he gives food in abundance, he covers his hand with the lightning, and commands it to strike the mark. So what is he ruler over?
Everything.
In this scripture, what is he ruler over? Lightning? Food? What? The depths of the sea? All right. He's ruler over nature. And it irritates me to no end when people say Mother Nature. There is no Mother Nature. It is his, and he is ruler over it. All right, and what about Job 37? From the breath of Elohim ice is made, and the expanse of the waters is frozen. Also with moisture he loves the cloud, he disperses the cloud of his lightning, and he changes directions, turning around by his guidance, that it may do whatever he commands it on the face of the inhabited earth, whether for correction or for his world or for loving kindness, he causes it to happen. Wow, I would like to spend about 8 hours just on this one. Okay? Not only is he in control of nature, but look at this, and it changes directions, turning around by his guidance. All right, so he can change it. He can change a tornado that's coming your way and make it go around you, or a hurricane, or whatever he wants to do. It's all under his control. But look at the last verse in 13. He allows it, whether for correction. Our world does not want to hear that today. When we have natural disasters, don't anybody dare say that God was using it to correct his people. That is so not politically correct, but it is so true, and it's scriptural. He can, and he did it all throughout Scripture, so why would he not do it now? If he didn't cause it, he allowed it, because it's all under his control. He's sovereign. And it says he does it for correction, or for his world, because he has a plan for this world, or for loving kindness. He causes it to happen.
So
Are
there
you-
actually is no natural disasters.
No. No, because he causes it to happen. And that's what I wanted to look, these are just some of the verses, because I want you to know your El Elyon.
So with that condition, thinking that this would, anything that happens, that's part of the world does. And we will all fight, you know,
Right. So it's not cyber.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
physical.
And remember in Israel, when they were obedient, what did they get on their land? Rain, so their crops would grow and they would profit and be successful. I mean, this is not anything new.
But what we're going through now, the tribulations that we're having in this country, I think is a lot because of the way we're living, the abortions and the leadership and the nations of the states that have accepted same-sex marriage and all of that. He says, correct your ways and I'll heal your land.
Mhm.
But we're going away from it instead of coming to it. So we're going to get more and more judgment on this nation because of it.
Disobedience results in judgment. Results in persons, results in judgment. So he causes it, but you know, I think Hasatan also would like to wreak havoc. You know, he's to seek, steal, and destroy. But you can't do it but what the Father doesn't allow him. So even if he doesn't cause it, he allows it to happen, but it's for his good purpose. Sometimes it's to bring you back to where you need to be. What about Luke 22:31? Is El Elyon in control of Hasatan? Is he in control of our adversary? Simon, Simon, behold, Hasatan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat, but I pray for you that your faith may not fail, and you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Hasatan has demanded, and in some translations it says ask, permission to sift you. So Hasatan cannot touch you, but what the Father doesn't allow him to, just like we read in the book of Job. Hasatan can do nothing to you, but what the Father allows. So he's sovereign over Hasatan, our adversary. And then we look in Job, then Jehovah said to Hasatan, behold, all that he has, he's talking about Job, is in your hand, only do not put forth your hand on him. So Hasatan departed from the presence of Jehovah. So he is in control over Hasatan, and he tells Hasatan what to do and not to do. And then John 19:10-11. Pilate therefore said to him, you do not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you, and I have authority to crucify you? And Yeshua answered, you would have no authority over me unless it had been given you from above. For this reason, he who delivered me up to you has the greater sin. So, who is the ruler of all authority? Who's the only giver of authority? The Most High God of Israel, El Elyon. And he says, you do not have the authority. All right, you would not have it unless it had been given to you from above. Matthew 9:6-7. But in order that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, then he said to the paralytic, rise, take up your bed, and go home. And he got rose. And he rose and went home. Start with typo. So we see Yeshua has authority over what? To forgive sins. He has authority to forgive sins. And who gave him the authority? Let's look at the last one. Matthew 28:18. And Yeshua came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So what I want you to see through just these sampling of scriptures is that El Elyon is the God Most High over everything in this universe. And sometimes we take that as a blanket statement, but I want you to see that it's very personal. It's nations, it's rulers, it's mankind, it's the elements of nature. It's you personally, it's your life, it's your death, it's the number of your days. And he gave it to his son. So his son has that authority as well. So I wanted you to see a glimpse of what he is sovereign over. And as we go into chapter 4, I think it's important.
On the authority of Yeshua over everything on this earth. When after he was crucified, he passed that on to his disciples, he passed on to the rest of them to raise the dead and heal the sick.
But he didn't give them all authority in heaven and earth. Yeah, Yeshua is the only one that was given all authority on heaven and earth. He gave them authority and a command to do certain things to carry on his word.
He asked us to walk like him and live much like him.
Right. So let me just ask you, is there anything that you have a question about? Is El Elyon in control of, or sovereign over, or ruler of? All right, so in verse 4, as we go through chapter 4, what happened now? How was Nebuchadnezzar's life going in verse 4?
Good,
Okay.
good at home at first.
He was at home at first. Things were good with Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? And he's giving his testimony, and he's starting out a story. This is my testimony. Okay? Have you ever written your testimony out? You know what? It's an awesome thing to do. It's a hard thing to do because how do you sit down and put it into words? You have to be really real with yourself to do that. And you really have to go before him and say, Father, give me what you would have to be my testimony, because if you do that, he's going to give you an opportunity to share your testimony with somebody. And just like Nebuchadnezzar, it's going to influence a lot of people. Okay? I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. Well, he had it all, didn't he? Or did he? Let's look. History tells us that the first half of Nebuchadnezzar's reign was war and conquering. Okay? And then the second half of his reign was peace and building. So this was written during the second half of his reign. Remember, there were the 3 sieges in Jerusalem. The first one, Daniel was taken. The second one, Ezekiel was taken. Jeremiah was not taken into captivity. But I want to show you some scriptures. So we know that he captured Jerusalem, right? He took them into captivity. I'm going to take you to Ezekiel. If you'll turn with me to Ezekiel chapter 29. And let's look at something El Elyon did for Nebuchadnezzar. 29, verses 17 through 20. I'm just going to read them to you for time's sake. Now in the 27th year, in the first month, on the first of the month, the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has made his army labor hard against Tyre. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was rubbed bare. But he and his army had no wages from Tyre for the labor that he had performed against it. Therefore, thus says Jehovah Elohim, Behold, I shall give the land of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he will carry off her wealth, and capture her spoil, and seize her plunder, and it will be wages for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt for his labor which he performed, because they acted for me, declares Jehovah Elohim. On that day I shall make a horn sprout for the house of Israel, and I shall open your mouth in their midst. Then they will know that I am Jehovah. So he had 3 sieges against Jerusalem and had taken them into captivity. And now we know that, and history tells us that it was in 572 BCE that he conquered Tyre. And the Father is saying here, through Ezekiel, that the spoils, the booty was not really that good. So he allowed Nebuchadnezzar to go against Egypt. Okay? Because he didn't get very much spoils from Tyre, so he's allowed him to go against Egypt. And let's keep looking at that. Jeremiah, if you'll turn to Jeremiah 43, starting in verse 8. Then the word of Jehovah came to Jeremiah in Taphanes, saying, Take some large stones in your hand, hide them in the mortar and in the brick terrace which is at the entrance of Pharaoh's palace in Taphanes, in the sight of some of the Jews, and say to them, Thus says Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, Behold, I am going to send and get Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon, my servant, and I am going, okay, what did he call him? His servant. He called Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was an evil king that was conquering and just took all the things from the temple and took his people into captivity. And he's saying, I am going to send and get Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. How could he be a servant? Because he was being used in his plan. And I'm going to set his throne right over these stones that I have hidden, and he will spread his canopy over them. He will also come and strike the land of Egypt. Those who are meant for death will be given over to death, and those for captivity to captivity, and those for the sword to the sword. Okay? Let me keep going. And I shall set fire to the temples of the gods of Egypt, and he will burn them and take them captive. And so he will wrap himself with the land of Egypt as a shepherd wraps himself with his garment, and he will depart from there safely. He will also shatter the obelisk of Heliopolis, which is in the land of Egypt, and the temples of the gods of Egypt he will burn with fire. So after he took over Tyre, the father allowed him to take over Egypt and get the spoils from Egypt. And he did to Egypt just what he did to Jerusalem. He destroyed their temples, and he took all of their gods, and he took a great amount of booty from that. All right, and then in chapter 44, I just want to read you a couple of verses here that are important. Starting in verse 26. Let's see. Nevertheless, hear the word of Jehovah, all Judah, or Yehudites, who are living in the land of Egypt. Behold, I have sworn by my great name, says Jehovah, never shall my name be invoked again by the mouth of any man of Judah in all the land of Egypt, saying, as Jehovah Elohim lives. So he's talking about his people, okay? The Jews that had gone down into Egypt, had escaped into Egypt. And the Father knows that they have run away into Egypt. And he says, Behold, I'm watching over them for harm and not for good. And all the men of Judah who are in the land of Egypt will meet their end by the sword and by famine until they are completely gone. And those who escape the sword will return out of the land of Egypt to the land of Judah, few in number. Then all the remnant of Judah who have gone to the land of Egypt to reside there will know whose word will stand, mine or theirs. And this will be the sign to you, declares Jehovah, that I'm going to punish you in this place, that you may know that my words will surely stand against you for harm. Thus says Jehovah, Behold, I'm going to give over Pharaoh, Hophra, king of Egypt, to the hand of the enemies, to the hand of those who seek his life, just as I gave over Zedekiah, king of Judah, to the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who was his enemy and was seeking his life. So what El Elyon is saying here, he prophesied that, you know what, Nebuchadnezzar was going to be given all these lands. He didn't do this himself. The Father said this was going to happen, and he allowed this to happen, and he allowed Nebuchadnezzar to be a victor in his battles and in his campaigns to amass all of his property and all of his wealth. So yes, Nebuchadnezzar was at ease in his house, flourishing. He had been on these campaigns. He had been to Israel, he had been to Tyre, he had been to Egypt, and now he's home and he's flourishing, and life is good for him. And then in verse 5, what happens? What happens to Nebuchadnezzar? Okay, he has a dream. And how did that dream affect him? Okay, so he has this bad dream. Have you ever had a bad dream?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He had a bad dream, and he said, these fantasies, as I lay in my bed, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. So what did he do? This is a typical Nebuchadnezzar thing. What did he do when he had a dream? To interpret. He called his wise men of Babylon. But this time, it's interesting, he didn't make them tell him what the dream was. He just said, interpret the dream. All right, and in verse 7, the magicians, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, the diviners came in, and I related the dream to them. Still, he's writing this. But, there's a contrast. He told them the dream, but the contrast is they didn't know the dream. They couldn't interpret the dream. All right? So, in verse 8, let's keep looking. Daniel finally comes into Nebuchadnezzar, and this is really neat. How does he describe Daniel in verse 8? He says, whose name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I related the dream to him, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, since I know that a spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery baffles you. And remember, at this time, he's at the beginning of his testimony. He is not a believer, okay? He knows Daniel has a God, and he knows that spirit of gods is in Daniel. And he says, tell me the visions of my dream which I've seen, along with its interpretation. Right? So, basically, he respected Daniel, didn't he? And he respected that Daniel had this God that gave him the ability to interpret dreams. So he begins to tell him what the dream is. Now, basically, what was the dream about? What object? A tree. All right. Remember, in 2 it was a statue. Now it's a tree. And he starts. He says, now he begins to describe the dream, and he says, as I lay on my bed, I was looking, and behold, there was a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. So tell me, describe the tree. How does he describe it?
Reach all the way to the top of the heavens, and you could have all of it.
Okay. It was a beautiful tree. It grew, it says, its height reached the sky. Plenty of fruit and foliage. Okay. Food for all. Right? The tree was large. The tree was strong. So, and it says, the beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the sky dwelt in its branches, and all living creatures fed themselves from it. So the significance of this huge, great tree in this dream was that in providing fruit and shade and sustenance, that it was shelter for all. It was all caring for. It provided everything that whatever was in and under the tree needed. Okay? So it provided sustenance and shelter for all. Then in verse 13, according to the dream, what happens next? Who comes on the scene? In verse 13, who comes on the scene? Okay, it says a holy watcher, or an angelic watcher, or a holy one, descended from heaven. Okay? Doesn't tell us who that person is, or that it doesn't tell us who the holy watcher was. All right, but there was a message that he shouted out, and what was the message? So the holy watcher comes, the angelic messenger, and he says, cut it down. Cut this big, beautiful tree down. But what was left of it? A stump. Okay? All right, and when you have a stump in the ground, can it grow back? It can. Why? Okay, it didn't say pull it up by the roots, did it? It said just cut the stump, cut it down, leave a stump. So the stump still had its roots. All right? And I thought it's interesting that the band of iron and bronze around it, what were the kingdoms that came after Babylon? They were the bronze kingdom and the iron kingdom. All right, and so in verse 15, what significant change takes place here? We're talking about a tree and a stump. Now what happens in verse 15? What change takes place? Right, it changes from a tree to a person. And it says, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beast in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let a beast's mind be given to him. For how long? In verse 16? For 7 periods of time, which would be 7 years, pass over him. Okay? So this tree, now we know, is a person. And just as the tree is chopped down and a stump is left, this person is going to be lose its glory, lose the mind of a man, and become like a beast for 7 years. And why is this going to take place in verse 17? It's a decree of the angelic watchers, and the decision is a command of the holy ones In order for what? What is the purpose of this?
And the living may know the Most High is ruler over the realm of mankind. He bestows on whom he wishes.
So what message is in that for Nebuchadnezzar? You know, he's walking on his palace and you know, his life is good, and he thinks he's amassed all of this fame and fortune. And this dream has been given to him to show that, you know what? You have what you have, no matter how little or how lot, because the Father gives it to you. The question is, are you content with what the Father gives you? All right? So the incredible truth, it says that the Most High is ruler over the realm of mankind, and he bestows it on whom he wishes and sets it over the lowliest of men. So you know what? This truth, knowing Eliel Yon, no matter what circumstance or tragedy you find yourself in the midst of, if you can look up to Eliel Yon, you've got everything that you need to get through whatever it is you're going through, because he is ruler over all of mankind. So in verse 18, how did Nebuchadnezzar contrast Daniel to all of his other wise men? What does he say? They couldn't do it, but you are able, for a spirit of the holy gods is in you. So this is the second time he's recognized that Daniel has a spirit, he has a God, and it's allowed him to interpret